if you would please welcome Javvad.
Thank you very much. Okay, so they didn't give me a clicker, that's your fault, so I'm going to have to carry on running back here. For those of you who don't know, my name's Javvad Malik, or Jav as most people call me because they can't pronounce my name properly. I blog, I make videos, and I'm an independent security consultant. Basically means I go work for whoever pays me the most money.
Do you wear a cape?
Sorry?
Do you wear a cape?
Sometimes. So what am I here to talk about? I'm here to converse with you about the immeasurable benefits of devolving redundant complexities of common communication in information security.
Single syllables, please.
Yeah, okay. In simpler language, I'm here to talk about simple use of the English language, how it can benefit us as individuals and the industry as a large in information security. Now, I suppose before I go into that, it's quite important I explain one concept that came across by a guy called Simon Sinek, no relationship, about how we actually communicate with each other. And he came up with this rather complex model. So this model, I'll talk you through how it works. This is the 3 layers as to how we communicate. And so what am I doing? What am I doing here right now? I'm here to talk to you about simple English, yeah, which is a pretty good statement of intent, but sounds pretty dull. So then how am I going to do that? How am I actually going to talk to you about English? Well, I'm going to use a bit of PowerPoint, some examples, maybe throw in a few bad jokes. But there's something really that's in the back of everyone's mind, and that's why. Why is this short, fat, bearded brown guy standing on stage talking to me about using simple English and how that's going to help information security? Because it doesn't really work like that. I suppose to explain that part, we have to go back in time to when I was a little boy. Now, before I actually got a spare tyre and filled out, I was actually quite a skinny, nerdy-looking bloke. And as a result, I don't know if any of you actually looked like that when you were young, but you just tend to get bullied a bit. It wasn't too bad, so don't feel too sorry for me. And I found it got a lot better once I started hanging around with smaller kids, which was a lot of fun. However, when I entered the sort of corporate world, I realized that size doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how strong you are, because it's all about your intellect. What do you know, and how do you use that information? That's why we're in this industry, because we understand the value of that information. There are a few crossovers, of course, so you could take up a pursuit like chess boxing. It's real, you can look it up. You play a round of chess and a round of boxing, and the winner is the one you can either knock someone out or you can give them checkmate. Really interesting. Anyway, so we get back to the model and say, how does this apply to information security? And a lot of us are really good at explaining what we do, or we have a rough inkling as to what we do. So what do? We stop bad guys getting access to information. We like breaking things. We stop insiders from attacking us. How do we do that? Well, we either use our favorite backtrack installation or Node Zero or Samurai, or we write reports, or we conduct audit actions or risk assessments, all this kind of stuff. These are our tools of how we go about it. But why? Why do we do this, and why is information security important? And generally, as a whole, we're pretty crap at explaining this to others. When you look at an information security department within an organization, why do they exist? And people generally can't give you a very clear answer. Project managers will say, we have to engage them because they are key in getting our project signed off and go live. The CEO says, well, I heard there's some legislation that requires me to have an IS department, so I've got an IS department and I pay for these bunch of overpaid consultants. And they're not very clear. Our customers aren't very clear because we aren't very clear ourselves as to why we do it. A lot of people might say, yeah, I do it for the lols, or I do it for the money. But these aren't the real reasons, the real drivers. And this is something that, because we fail to articulate clearly, we fail to get buy-in from others. And this is something that I look at myself as well, and I think, well, someone says to me, and this is a conversation I have with my children quite a lot. My daughter says to me, what do you do? Oh, I'm a security guard on the internet. Think of it like that. Why? Well, because there are bad people on the internet. Why? Well, they want to take stuff that doesn't belong to them. Why? And you can go mad in this sort of thing, and you have to get to a point where you say, okay, sit down. I do it because when you grow up, I want your information to be secure. Not just yours, but I want other children your age, I want their information to be secure. Well, how do you do that? Now we're getting to the how. You understood the why, now we get to the how. How do I do that? I work for companies. I help them get secure, and they can secure your information, your mum's information, everybody's information. And we can start transacting it in a safe way, so that when you grow up, you still have some privacy left in your life. I'll give you a good example of, I think it's good. I was once reviewing a PIN mailer system for a bank. And the PIN mailer system is one where the PIN numbers are generated for your credit card or debit card. They get encrypted into a PIN block, so you've got the PIN number. There's a couple of different ways, but you've got the PIN number, normally the PAN number and the user's name and address. It gets encrypted into a block, sent along the wire to wherever the printer is. And the printer normally has a HSM built into it, so it decrypts the information internally. It prints it onto that tamper-proof paper and prints it out so that no one has ever seen your PIN number. That's the general principle of how a PIN mailer works. So no one sees a PIN number. If anyone tries to see it, it gets exposed as like void, tampered with, and they post it off to the address that's printed on the outside. I was looking at one of these systems, and the printer that they had used was an old printer, so it didn't have a HSM built into it. So as soon as the network entered the data center, there was a HSM there. The data got decrypted, and across the data center's internal network, it got sent to the printer. Okay. That doesn't sound too good, because anyone who's got access to the data center's internal network can sniff that data, and they've got the PIN number, PAN number, name and address. So, they could siphon it all off, send it abroad, magstripe only, cloned, whatever, take money out of cash point. This had been recognized and raised as a risk 2 years earlier, yet it had been accepted by the business. Why did that happen? Was the business stupid? Do they not care about, a few PIN numbers going missing or some users losing their money? Was it too expensive? And one of the reasons really is we don't get to the why. Why is it really important to make sure that PIN block is encrypted all the way to the end? We ourselves sometimes are lazy in the sense that we don't dig into the business reasons behind why do we even use a PIN number in the first place. And because we can't articulate it clearly, the business don't understand it, and all they hear is blah, 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 it's going to cost £10,000 to buy a new printer, and blah, blah, blah. Someone might not be able to get the PIN numbers from the internal data center, which they've already spent millions on to build secure anyway. So it doesn't make any sense. But when you look into that actual business process around why do we have a PIN number and why do we want it to be secure from the point of generation to the point it reaches the customer's hand, business-wise, you need to be able to prove that from the time it's generated to the time it reaches the customer and they open it, it hasn't been tampered with. If you cannot prove that, and it goes to a court of law, if you cannot prove that or there's reasonable doubt, your whole card security comes under question. because you can't prove it. And then anyone with a credit card can go to court and say, I have a bank card with that bank. I want my money back because I didn't make any of these transactions. Ooh, all of a sudden that becomes a real problem. That's something that the business can understand. That's in their language. I'd like to say they went and fixed it. They sort of fixed it. They moved the HSM closer to the printer, and they shortened the cable between it, and they segregated it a bit. So it was pretty good. But that's the power of speaking the language. People won't do what we want them to do just because we tell them to do it. And it's not just on risk acceptance, it's at the business level. Project managers won't engage us. We have to speak in their language that they understand. And when they understand it, they will take it on as their own belief. This is the problem with compliance issues, so PCI DSS. People only do it because they feel they have to do it, and they'll only do what they have to do. But if you can get them to understand in language that they understand why they have to do it, then you won't need to continue poke and prod them. They'll probably generally do it themselves, if it makes business sense, if it's in their language. I'd like to introduce you to this lovely lady here, Chrissie Maher. How many people know who she is? Good. For people living in the UK at least, she's probably had one of the biggest impacts on all of our lives. And she was born long before most of us were born. And this was probably back in, well, she was born longer than that, but back in 1971, when I think Brian was a little boy. And John was a teenager. She was sitting out trying to fill out a government form from a local council in Liverpool. And she couldn't really understand how to fill out the form correctly. She was looking to see what benefits she could claim on housing benefits and stuff like that, and it just didn't make any sense. It made no sense to her whatsoever. And she thought, well, maybe I'm not really that educated and my English isn't that good. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I need to understand better. So she went to ask one of her friends. And she was more educated, and she said, well, you know what? I really struggle with these forms myself. So she went to someone else, and she'd done a bit of research, as much as she could, in a Liverpool area. And she found, well, you know, nearly everyone I know struggles with these flipping forms. They just tick whatever seems appropriate. They send it off, and they hope that they'll get some, you know, benefit money, or they'll, whatever, you know, council rates are sorted out properly and what have you. So she started a movement. She said, you know what? It's not my fault that I can't understand it. It's the government's fault. They should provide forms that are easy to understand, easy to implement. So this was the days before Twitter, so she couldn't do a hashtag campaign, you know, simple English for Chrissie in Liverpool. So she started campaigning, and she worked hard. And she worked hard for about 8 years, and in 1979, she thought, sod it. She went down to the Houses of Parliament, set up a little stall out there, got a bunch of government forms and started shredding them in front of the government. She said, sod it, this is my protest. These forms aren't worth the paper they're printed on. I'm shredding them all. They're useless. And there was a few, you know, journalists there looking, saying, okay, what's this crazy woman going to do now? And so she's there shredding her forms. Or, well, probably not like that. She's probably just ripping them up. And along came the local bobbies. Hello, hello, hello. What are you doing over here, miss? I'm shredding forms because they make no sense whatsoever. I'm sorry, miss, but it shall be lawful for the commissioners of police, from time to time and as occasion shall require, to make regulations for the route to be observed by all carts, carriages, horses and persons, for preventing obstruction of the streets and thoroughfares within the Metropolitan Police District, in all times of public processions, public rejoicings or illuminations. And it also gives directions to the constables for keeping order and for preventing any obstruction of the thoroughfares in the immediate neighbourhood of Her Majesty's palaces and the public offices, the High Court of Parliament, the courts of law and equity, the magistrates' courts, the theatres, and other places of public resort. And in any case, when the streets or thoroughfares may be thronged or may be liable to be obstructed. Are you trying to say I have to leave? With that, she'd actually proven her point. She'd proven a point that I'm trying to complain against your use of poor language that no one can understand. And what do? You try to fob me off with exactly that. That's exactly what you're fobbing me off with. The press had a field day. They loved it. They ran the campaign. And about 2 years later, the government started taking notice. They saw some value in it. They reviewed about 150,000 of their forms. 79,000 restructured, 36,000 scrapped altogether. She made a big impact. And it wasn't just government. She went on to tackle private businesses, banks, insurance companies. The fine print, what does it mean? What are you getting your customers to sign up to? She was honoured with an OBE. And back in 2000, she was named one of the information pioneers of the century. Think about that. Information pioneer of the century for what? I don't understand what you're saying. It's not my fault. It's yours. And she made a profound impact with that. Now think about that in our work. The ISMS is designed to ensure the selection of adequate and proportionate security controls that protect information assets and give confidence to interested parties. Is that any real different from what the policeman said to Chrissie? Are our forms, or our documentation, any less complicated to understand than probably the forms Chrissie was looking at back in 1971? The way we converse with our project managers, our stakeholders, our senior business leaders, is that any more simpler? Oh yes, we have a risk rating and the likelihood and the threat and the cryptography and the HSM and the blah-de-blah-de-blah. English, do you speak it? No. What does this lead to? Last year, if any of you were fortunate enough like me to be working for a bank or any similar sort of company that was having its competitors targeted by the infamous lulz boat, directors were a bit nervous. And what were they doing? They were calling their security people in, their CISOs in and everyone. They're saying, shit, oops, they just got hacked. Can it happen to us? Well, were they really hacked? It's more like a denial of service attack. It's not really a hack, which is different from, no, can it happen to us? Oh, well, if you'd read the report that I'd submitted to you last year, I detailed all the countermeasures we needed for, no, can this happen to us? Well, if you give me about £10,000, can this happen to us? No, we're safe. And they leave the room thinking, I have no idea what he said. I have no confidence in what he said. And as that executive's leaving, some snake oil guy comes up to him, say, I've got this little widget. It's compatible with the cloud, protects against APT. Ooh, this makes a little bit more sense. What? Tell me more. Well, give me a bunch of money, and I'll make sure you'll never get hacked. And what has that achieved? Wasted budget. The execs have got less confidence in their security team. They're like, well, what do these guys know? I know they mean well, their heart's in the right place. I can't understand what they're talking about. But these guys, they come in with words that actually make sense, give me a nice warm feeling. And I can trust them a bit. Trust. That's what it boils down to. When someone doesn't understand you, do they necessarily trust you? It's a bit like when you're in a foreign country and you're on the bus, say, for example, and you hear all these foreign languages. I mean, that could be East London, to be honest. But you're on the bus and you're hearing all these foreign languages, and then you hear someone talking in English, and all of a sudden, you want me? We speak the same language, yeah. We're safe, we're brothers.
So you automatically trust somebody. But what else is trust? Now, a few weeks ago, one of my neighbour's kids was cycling out on the road, and they kind of like fell over and hurt themselves a bit. And after I stopped laughing, I went, helped them up and said, go inside. Now, did I go home and then say to my wife, our daughter's got a bicycle, what are you doing to make sure she doesn't fall off? Not really. Why? Because I trust that my wife has got my children's interests at heart. I know she's just as concerned about my valuable assets, my children, as I am. I know that even when I'm not in the room and I'm not looking, she's going to look after them as much as I am. So even if I said to her, but imagine this. Imagine I went to her and said, Mrs. Malik, what are you doing to prevent our child from falling off? She goes, I heard about that. That's really bad. I'm going to de-link the chain, flatten the tyres, wrap it all in bubble wrap and super glue the helmet to her head. I might also say, you know what, I need some external help. Maybe a psychiatrist. But that's what trust is. That I don't actually go to her and ask her that. Now imagine that. Imagine if your business trusted you and really trusted you. When your competitor gets hacked, do you think in the boardroom everyone's going to be asking, will our security guys really protect us from that? Or will they turn around and say, you know what, our guys are good. If they have a problem, they'll probably bring it to us or tell us about it. But we trust them. A bit different, isn't it? How many of us are confident that in our board, those are the conversations that are happening? Yeah, our security guys, they kick ass, man. Don't worry about them. Yeah, mistakes happen, but they're the best in the business. Or is it more like, they got hacked, how confident are they? I mean, they give us some pretty graphs, they give us some charts, they give us some metrics, they talk about risks, but it doesn't really make much sense. Trust isn't something you can buy out of the box, and it's not something that happens overnight. Chrissie spent 9 years lobbying and going there, and spent over a decade in doing her work in total before she got to a stage where somebody turned around, listened to her, and said, you know what? Yeah, let's work with it. Are we isolating ourselves? Possibly. Does insulting our user base do us any favours? Don't answer that. Do thinking our managers don't get it work? No. 9 times out of 10, when you look at information, okay, we've got these really effective hacks and high-tech things, but when you look over the trends, they're not the ones that are successful. They're not the ones that really target people time and time again. They form a smaller percentage, and the majority of the times it's, SQL injection, still up there. Users clicking on links sent to them, still up there. So, we're not really there to explain stuff that's revolutionary different to them. It's simple things that we need to understand, we need to be able to explain in simple language, and we need to be able to clearly articulate why. Don't click on a link. That's simple. Yeah? So rather than saying, if your email client delivers a HTML format, no. Don't click on a link. Simple. Why? Why shouldn't you click on a link? And it's more than it's bad for you, but get into, when you build that relationship and your trust with your users, you'll get into understanding how to deliver that message better. Simple language, get to the heart of the problem, and you know what? Users will start trusting us, and our message will be more clearly delivered at an individual level, at a departmental level, and at an industrial level. Thank you.